So next up, we're going to be talking about forms in HTML, right? So first thing is, why do we need the forms? So let's say whenever I want to capture some user information, I want the user to input something and I want to maybe store it in some database or send it to some server, whatever, right? So for that purposes, I would be creating a form in HTML, right? So we're going to be seeing that how we're going to be creating form over here. Okay, so in HTML, we are having this parent tag known as form. So if I just create a form over here, so this is basically the main parent inside which we will be adding all the components which are related to the form. So we can have multiple things inside the form. Let's say I can have some labels that will display what to input. We can have some input boxes, we can have some checkboxes, we can have some some buttons and like maybe radio buttons or like a submit button, like that, right? So all these things can be created in the form very easily. So the main tag that we're going to be using is the form, and action over here is basically just the what, like where we want to send the information to, right? So we're going to be adding that URL over here. So we're going to be coming back to this later, but first of all, let us just try to create a simple form and let's just see that how things will look like. Okay, so over here I'm just going to create a label first. Okay, and let's say this label is for name, and I'm just going to ask for the username, right? So the label would be saying name. Next up, I would be adding a input field in which the user will input the name, right? So in order to create input field, so input is basically a tag, and input will have very like different attributes, right? Depending on what type of input we want to take. We can have text input, we can have numeric input, we can have password inputs, right? So password inputs will basically show the text in dotted form, like it will be hidden, right? We can have date input and all that stuff, right? So if I just add input over here, so you will see we are getting this type over here, right? So this type can be changed, but for now let's keep it text only, and let's see. I'm just gonna just the input box is just gonna take some text input which will be the name of the user over here, right? So I'm just gonna create an input and I'm gonna save it. So you see over here, okay, let me just comment the button for now there. So what I see is there is a name, the label is name over here, and let me just also add a colon just for the a bit segregation. Okay, and then we have this input field. So if I click on this, I can give some input over here, right? So if I type over here, so you can see that, okay, I'm able to type in this. Okay, so this is a very simple input field that we have created over here. Okay, maybe if I try to change the type to password over here, and now if I type over here, so you see the things like it is basically showing this password symbol after this. So if I'm typing over here, it is basically showing these dots, right? So the text is hidden now. So like this way I can hide, I can basically change the type of my input over here. So I'm just gonna make it back to text. Okay, and also I can add some buttons over here. So let's say I just add a simple button over here, and I can also define the type of the button. So I can say that this will be a submit button that will help me to send information to somewhere, right? So there it is, and I'll just write submit. So there it is. So whatever the name I type, and I click on submit, and whatever the action this button is going to perform, that will happen when I click on the submit button, right? Now in input field, I also need to have a name attribute over here. So name attribute will basically make sure that my information is being sent. If I don't have this name attribute, then it is not going to send, right? So let me just give the name as name, right? So that's it. That's a very simple form that we have created, taking the name of the user and just submitting the name. That's it. Now let's see a bit more different features that a form will provide us in the HTML. So first of all, talking about this input field only, right? So this input field, I have already shown you that I can have text input over here. Now, and I also shown you the password input. Now what other thing that we can do over here? So let's see that. So I can also have email, right? So this email will basically have this validation that there should be @.com and all those email validations, right? So whenever I just type something over here, and I have to put this @ and then something.com, right? Then only it will validate, like it's a valid email, right? So if I want to capture email, so I would be using the type email over here, right? And I can also have numbers. Now if I click over here and if I try to like give numbers over here, so this is gonna accept the number inputs, right? So these are like the validations that my form will have. Also, if I write date over here, so you see that now this has changed to like a date format, right? So in this way I can basically modify my inputs. Now we can also have radio boxes and check boxes, right? So basically the radio buttons that we have are we can have multiple radio buttons, and I have to, let's say, choose. I can only allow my user to choose only one option, so I'll be using a radio button, and there are also check boxes that we can create. So what I'm going to do is, let me just try to create a new form and show you with an example over here. So let's say I create a new form over here. Now this form is basically, let's say, going to have a checkbox, right? So you see on some web pages that there are buttons that you have read the terms and conditions, and then you checkbox and you check in the box, and then you basically click on the submit button, right? So for that, what we can do is we can create a checkbox over here. So what I'll do is I will basically say input, and the type over here I'm going to give checkbox, okay? And then I'm going to give a name. Let's just say read, okay? And then I will be giving a value. So value is basically would be let's call it instead of read, let's give it terms, and value I'll also give terms, okay? And then I'll just display the text that I want to display over here. So let's say I want to display the like something that I have read, right? So basically I would be adding a label first, and then I'll just say, I'll just not use for over here, and I'm gonna put this input inside the label like this, and then I'm just gonna give, let's say, I'm just gonna write terms, okay? So you see now I have this terms over here that is written, and then the checkbox. So I can like select and unselect it, right? So you can have this validation if this is selected or not, and then you can proceed on the next web page or something like that, right? Similarly, I can also have radio buttons over here. So let's say I create another label over here, and just gonna remove the for, and over here I'll just say input. Input would be type of radio, okay? Now basically I'm creating a button over here, but let's say radio button, the use of radio button is that I have multiple options and I can only select one option, right? So for that, what I can do is I can first give a name. Let's just give a name, gender. I can only select, let's say, male and female, right? So I'll give a value over here. So the value would be male, right? So I'm just gonna write inside this, I'm just gonna write male. Okay, now similarly I am gonna create another label, and the type would be radio again. Let's say the name is gender only. Now one thing I'm just going to show you, basically both of these are gender, right? And the value I'm going to give is female, and the text would be female, okay? Now if I save it, you see I'm getting male and female, right? If I just comment this out for now, there it is. So there are two options. Now basically if you look over here, if I select male, male is selected. If I select female, the male is unselected, so only female is being selected, right? And only one of the male and female is being selected. But let's say if I make this name as, let's say, let's just call it gender with double R, right? Gender. So I have changed the spelling over here. So now if I select male and I select female, both of them are being selected, right? So basically it decides on this name value that if one name value is selected, the other will get unselected. So make sure that if you are creating multiple options, so the multiple options should have same name, so that you can have a one selection in that. Okay, now if I save it, selection will only happen on one gender. So that's how the radio button works. Now we can also create drop down menus over here, right? So let's see how we can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment this form out, and or maybe just over here I'll add a line, and I'm going to create a new form. Okay, so now let's say I want to have something like there is a drop down I want to select from, and that option will be selected, right? So for that, what I can do is, let's say there is let's say I'm going to create a label, and maybe I just want to have selection from maybe different countries, right? There is a drop down and I want to select the country over here, right? So I'm just gonna, maybe in the for, I'll just write country over here, right? And the text I will be displaying would be country. So now after this, I would want to add an input field, that not an input field actually, but basically a field that will have a drop downs, right? So for that, what I'll be using is I'll be using this tag known as select. Okay, so basically I'm just gonna maybe give a name over here. So I'm gonna say country. Okay, and then I can give an ID over here also. Let's just call it country only, right? And then what I will do is, inside the select tag I can add multiple options over here, right? So multiple options will be responsible for giving those options in the drop down. So I can have option. Okay, so the what the value I will give over here, that will help me to select that value, right? And I can give a text to that, like what I want to display. So let's say I would be saying India, and the value for that would be, let's say, IN. Okay, then I can just copy this and I'll just say USA, and the value would be USA. And let's say one more, so I'll just say over here Australia, and value would be AUS. Okay, so now as soon as I save it, you see over here there is this drop down kind of thing will be created over here. So if I just click on this drop down, so you will see all the options, so India, USA, and Australia. So whatever I select over here, so if I select USA, that will be displayed. If I select Australia, that will be displayed. Okay, so like this you can have the selections in your HTML page. Now next up, talking about buttons over here. So buttons are basically the part of form that we can use to do something with the data that has been inputted in the form, right? So we have already seen that how normal button works. So there is a submit button that will help me to submit the data to the like wherever I want to submit, right? Then I can also have maybe a reset button in this. So what reset button is going to do is, it is going to just reset all the form values, right? So it's very simple to create a reset button. So what you have to do is, you just have to add a button over here, and the type that you would be giving for the button would be reset. Okay, so once you create a reset button over here, let me just show with an example only. So let's say in this field, I will have, instead of this date, I'll have the type as text. Okay, now instead of submit, I will call it, the type would be reset and the text would be reset. Okay, now if I just write something over here, and if I click on reset button, so the form field has been reset, right? So in this way you can play around with the button, and you can also have a normal button, right? So you can just simply add a button over here, and this is, I'll just call it button. So you can also have like a normal button, which you can further try to manipulate the functionality of this button via JavaScript. So this is a normal button, and then you can also have a specific type of buttons over here, right? And after this, you can also do the stylings over here. So whatever the properties that we have discussed, so very simple, right? We can change the height, width, margins, paddings. I can add colors. I can change the font and all of this entire form, right? So the CSS part is something that you can try out. You just have to maybe you can directly apply on this form. So just call this form attribute over there, and let me just show you with an example. So you can just simply apply everything, whatever you write over here will be applied directly on the form. So if I just say that the width of the form, I just want to increase, maybe let's say 300 px. So if I save it, so you see that the size, the width of this has been changed, And maybe if I add some margin, I'm just adding some properties, uh, let's say 20 px. And for the other part, I would say auto. So auto is just gonna adjust it automatically, giving equal size, right, from both the ends. So something like this. I'll just comment the other button for bit now. So I'm just going to comment this out, and then I can maybe add some padding over here. So let's say the padding is 20 px. Okay. And maybe I can add a border also. So the border would be so now there are different properties I can give to the border, right? So maybe I can define the width. So let's say if I say 2 px, so 2 px width would be the width of the border, right? And then I can define the type of border. So if let's say I want a solid border, so solid. And then I can also define the color, right? So let's say I just want the color, I don't know, like let's say this one only. This looks weird, a bit grayish. Yeah, that's the color of the border. And maybe we can curve the border a bit, so I can give a border radius, let's say 10 px. Yeah. And maybe background color, something like a bit, I can change. Yeah, so basically I have just decorated the form, right? So now I can just, it is working fine. So that's how you can basically apply css over here, and you can give it a try. You can play around with it, and we're going to be seeing in our project that how we can further modify the forms to look good in our websites. Thanks for watching. For more amazing content, head over to cypherschools.com and keep learning. See you there.